This morning we're talking to Carl Hiaasen, author of, I think, it's a 15 novels now, are we, Carl?
Yeah, the grown-up books, yeah, 15. And then
Yeah.
I've got some kids' books too.
There's about half a dozen of those too, yeah?
Yep, yeah. It's yeah, you're right.
So so the latest book is called Squeeze Me. And this is
Right.
so this is now I've got a lot to ask you about this book. First of all, the politics shines through a bit stronger than it does in most of your books, doesn't it?
Well, it does, because one of the characters is a president who has a vacation mansion in Palm Beach. So people tell me it resembles somewhat the character we have in the White House right now.
Yes, it's a president who happens to have a holiday home. Yes.
Yeah, although he's hard to surpass satirically, uh, but it's a challenge.
Yes, he doesn't really leave a lot of room left for you guys, does he? To be fair,
Every day is a new. He sets the bar either lower or higher depending on your point of view. But it's very tough when so this is the first. I mean, I've had politicians in the novels
yes,
before, and I've written about lobbyists, and I mean, there's always some subtext of, if not politics, some topical,
yeah.
thing. But this was because of the times we're in, and what's happened the last few years in our own country. I mean, and the connection that it has with Florida.
Yeah.
All weird stories lead. There's a slime trail from every weird story in America to Florida. So
Yes.
it's a question of sort of weaving that into a narrative fiction.
So do you feel it was possibly inevitable eventually then that the president would end up in Florida at some point? It's like,
Well,
home.
he has a history here, but it's inevitable that stuff would be happening here. I don't know if you saw the news today, but his former campaign manager, this guy named Brad Pascal, who took a bunch of the money he made as campaign manager last year and bought a big house down in Fort Lauderdale, where I was born, and he was taken away last night and committed involuntarily after threatening his wife with a gun. They found 10 weapons in the residence, and the SWAT team had to come carry him off. And this is the guy, he was the successor to Paul Manafort, who was already in prison. So
yes,
the hits just keep on coming.
So what is it about Florida? I mean, you talk about the slime trail, and the phrase Florida man has become kind of synonymous with, well, I think we know what a Florida man is. So
yeah. Well, and Trump is our latest. He became an official resident of Florida.
Yes.
Not long ago, escaping New York. His own tax law made it very expensive to live in New York. So a lot of people from that part of the country have switched their residencies from New York, Connecticut, places like that, to Florida. And so he just took advantage of his own tax law and did the same thing. So he's an official hashtag Florida man. But I feel like I've been writing about Florida man characters for my entire career, and it's just now sort of catching on in the vogue,
But I mean, you've lived in Florida all your life. I had the joy of 8 years in Clearwater. Are we Florida men?
Well, 8 years in Clearwater does put you in sort of a special league there. I think you don't have to be born here to be a Florida man, but you haven't made the headlines for doing anything monstrous lately. I think
Recently, no.
No. So I mean, I think you have to actually become one. You have to do something pretty extreme, although it's relative here, what's extreme and what's not.
Yeah. Well, and I know in a lot of your sort of like your mid-period novels, your central characters are often those classic Florida men, where you have people with prosthetic weed whackers, for example, right? I mean,
and he was one of the heroes, actually.
Yeah. So I was reading Squeeze Me, and I was waiting for the Florida man to emerge, and it's eventually about halfway through it hit me that the president is the Florida man in this one.
Yeah, he is. And and I've been waiting for years to, because we have these invasive pythons, these giant pythons that have been in the headlines for many years, and they're a real problem here. They've sort of eaten their way through the Everglades and are moving out. And I just, in my own, this is really twisted, but in my imagination, I thought, wouldn't it be something if they showed up on the island of Palm Beach, one of the most exclusive places, and they're good swimmers, they could get there. So then you have the presidential aspect. It all just sort of came together as something. And here's the thing is, I mean, none of what happens in that novel is completely implausible. All the scenarios that I've set up there absolutely could happen. I think that might be the scariest thing of all.
Yeah, I mean, I always wonder with authors if there isn't the slightest hint of wish fulfillment going on, possibly.
I'm going to confess that to you. I mean, look at it. The idea of a giant python slithering up the seawall at Mar-a-Lago, of course it's a personal fantasy. Of course it is. I'm not even going to deny that.
But you do.
And you have to feel sorry. There's a Secret Service, a character in the book who's a Secret Service agent.
Yes.
There's a bunch of them. But, they don't train for wrestling giant python. That's not part of their training.
No, I can't imagine it is, to be fair.
No.
But at least you do actually willingly and openly admit it is Mar-a-Lago that you're writing about.
Oh yeah, no. I never claimed to be a well person. This is all as much psychotherapy for me as anything. And but that's one of the great selfish pleasures of writing satire, I think, is that and of course I do think that the UK has a much longer and more colorful history of it than the United States. It's still relatively new here. I mean, you could go back to Mark Twain.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is that you're writing about something fairly serious. You're writing out of some sense of injustice. There's in every good work of satire, at the seat of it is some sort of anger.
Yeah,
I think some sort of sense of injustice. Otherwise, it's just slapstick.
And there certainly is an element of slapstick in what you write.
Well, I mean, there's some scenes that are cinematic.
Yeah.
And they're funny on the screen regardless of the context. But when something happens, for instance, to one of the unsavory characters, I devote a lot of time when I'm writing to what poetically I can do. It's not, they're just not going to step off a curb and get hit by a bus. It's got to be better than that. It's got to be something just. There's got to be karma. You think about this stuff, because otherwise it is, otherwise it veers, I mean, there are a lot of people that thought, Monty Python was slapstick.
Yeah.
But it was really smart. And it was, I mean, not everybody got the joke. And that's how you know it's good, when not everybody gets it.
Oh, okay. I'll think about that one for a second. Yeah, that works. So you mentioned it being cinematic. Is this one that's destined for the big screen, do you think? I mean, I know Striptease got produced.
Yeah, well, I think this, I don't know, there's people interested in it, but I also think there's a clock ticking on this. We don't know what's going to happen in November. We know that a Trumpian character like that could work. We don't know whether he's going to get reelected or not. I mean, the reason they and the book was written on kind of a tight deadline was because they wanted to come up before the election, because we just don't know. So I don't know, it takes a while. And in these times of COVID, I mean, here, and I think in England as well, a lot of the movie production business is shut down or has been greatly inhibited about what they can do. So I don't know, I mean, I always try to be as helpful as I can when somebody in Hollywood, wants to option one of the novels. I'm as grateful and helpful as I can be, but I don't have any high hopes, because I mean, I think it would be funny. I think there's some actors who'd be great in this and who would love to do it. But again, everything over here is kind of slowed down in terms of both television and movie production.
Well, actually, I am actually calling you from New Zealand right now, where we actually have one of the few active film industries in the world right now.
And you're still, how are they still, can I ask how they're still shooting? I mean, I know that you guys are extremely strict, the Prime Minister, everything over there has been locked up pretty tight.
Oh yeah.
How are they doing it now?
Well, our border is closed to anybody except New Zealand citizens and residents. Anyone who has got New Zealand privileges is allowed in. Or you can get business exemptions. And if I'm not mistaken, a large number of the Avatar crew got in on that basis, because I mean, we have an economy to think about. So,
well, absolutely. But are they doing all the social stuff, distancing, like on the set. I'm trying to think practically when shooting in a movie set, which is a crowded, usually a crowded place.
Right.
You know.
Now I get accused of gloating at this point when I talk about what's going on down here, and I've got family and friends of my wife back in St. Pete who are telling me what an absolute mess things are up there. So I'll try not to be too smug about it, but the reality is that we've basically kicked it down here by and large. I'm in Auckland, which is our main city, and we've still got some degree of social distancing here, but the rest of the country
Really?
effectively is COVID free.
That's amazing. Now I'll just tell you once, I've never been there. It's one of the places that, because I'm a fly fisherman, I've always wanted to, all my friends who are hip to this have been coming to New Zealand for years. Like one of them,
The South Island will blow your mind.
One of my closest friends just last year, but before any of this started, he was going there so much, he bought a place on one of the rivers. Okay. And now he was spending all of his winters there, and now he doesn't know when he's going to be able to go back. He said, I don't know if I'll ever be back yet.
No, it's awkward. We're not letting anybody without New Zealand privileges in. We can travel out, but we have to do a fortnight in quarantine when we come back.
Yes, yeah.
Mandatory. So my wife and daughter were planning a trip back to Clearwater to see family and friends in July, and that got flagged. So yeah, this is a strange time to be alive.
Yeah, it is very it is surreal. I mean, we'll get through it. We haven't had any kind of leadership here in this country, and that's I think your prime minister, I think, was on Stephen Colbert, right?
Yeah.
I mean, famously, he thinks she's terrific, and I mean, but it was actually leadership, and in America, we're not getting the same message from anybody, and the result is we have 50 states that all have varying degrees, and it looks like it's moved around, and it's now the upper Midwest is having high case. I mean, right? We do not have it under control.
Well, to borrow one of your book titles, I mean, Florida gets a double whammy, doesn't it? Because you've got a double absence of leadership down there.
We do, and the mixed messages and the discouraging of people wearing masks. You know, I have a grandson who's in public school in Miami, and Miami's been one of the epicenters here in the United States. And the rates are down, but of course everyone's nervous about, what they'll bring home.
Yeah.
And then I have two grandkids who are in college, different colleges, which have vastly different ways that they're handling this.
Right.
In terms of testing and all that kind of stuff. And it is a frustrating time, and it's hard to find any laughter in the news. And that's why, even when I was writing this book, there were days, and I'm a news junkie, I couldn't even face up to, and I'm writing a newspaper column, but it was so hard. But I just kept thinking, I know how I feel, and I was ravenous to find anything that would make me laugh. So one of the things that got me through writing this book was knowing, look, if I can just bring a little bit of happiness or joy or silliness into somebody's life, however briefly it is, it means something. It's worth doing it just to get it out there, No,
it does make sense. Now, one thing that I was struck by when I read Squeeze Me was there's a couple of fleeting references to a global pandemic.
Oh yeah,
and I'm guessing that there's a lead time in writing a book like this, and possibly I'm guessing that was that sort of retrofitted.
Yeah, I'm one of these people that I'm rewriting the whole time, and I'm going back, and I'm on chapter 21, and I'm going back and rereading chapter 1 again. So I was able. It was a very compressed timetable to get it done. I was writing up until May, so I was writing during the first 3 months of lockdown, and I was able to put in references to the pandemic and very even specific references to what was going on in Florida.
Right.
I was able to go back and fit that into the narrative. But that was the strange blessing of being locked away. Was it? And I'm trying desperately to finish this book in time. Was that I had nothing else to do, and writers self-isolate anyway. That's what we do. So it's just a question of getting it done.
So is there going to be a lockdown novel coming out, the Tales from Lockdown?
No, I mean, I'm hoping and praying that this passes in a way. I think that everything written from here on out will have to have some historical reference to it. The next one I have to do, I'm doing another, I sort of alternate between the grown-up books and the kids' books.
Right.
So it'll have more from a young person's point of view, what it's been like. But I mean, but again, since we can't see into the future, I think most Americans would give anything to look at a place like New Zealand and say, we're going to get there. But then you look at these rallies that the president is holding, and he's scoffing at the masks, and they're all, they're all in mosh pit mode.
Yeah.
And it's what it's sad about is most of them are just, a lot of them are kind of cranky white guys, all jammed in together, and cheering and breathing. There are ways to support a candidate and get involved in the political process without infecting everybody around you. And it just goes out the door, because it's a sign. It's you're macho if you don't, wear a mask, which is, it's really just the opposite.
Yes.
I mean, it really, it's just the most disrespectful thing. And we're still having people die. And it's, this sounds crass, but it's not just Democrats who are dying. It's Democrats, Republicans, Independents. The disease doesn't care. It kills everybody.
People. Yes.
Yeah. So the perverse irony is that Trump's negligence has and people following his views on this have led to deaths of lots of his own supporters. That's the great irony.
So you say that we can't see into the future, right? So I'm going to ask you to do exactly that right now. What's it going to look like in November?
Is this a grown-up program? How are we editing?
Say what you need to say, sir.
It's going to be a shit show in November.
Okay, I was expecting worse than that, but I think that we're on the same page there.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, I mean, shit show covers a multitude of sins. Would you care to
I think he's already said what he's going to do. He's already he said that first of all, he lost the popular vote by 3 million to Hillary Clinton. Yeah. I predict it's a much bigger gap than that this time.
Okay.
He's already got lawyers in place to litigate, not in red states where he's going to win, but every place where it's close, he's going to challenge the mail-in ballots, which there is no evidence of any massive scandal, anything with mail. And first of all, you can't do it. It's individual county supervisor of elections. It's not like some database that evil villains can get into. There's no Dr. Evil. You can't do it. The databases are all different.
Oh yeah.
But he's gonna litigate and draw it out, and then in the months between November and January, while this thing gets sorted out in the courts, he's gonna go nuts. He's gonna pardon all his people that have been locked up, and whoever else he can sell a pardon to. He's gonna take all kinds of drastic, radical action. And I've said all along that they're gonna need a tow truck, to get his fat ass out of the White House. He's not going to go. And if you read, and you probably did or heard about the New York Times reporting, they got hold of his taxes.
Oh yes.
That shows you why he's so desperate to stay in that job. First of all, that's going to keep him out of jail. Staying in the White House is really maybe the only way he's not going to get indicted.
Right.
And secondly, he's got the Justice Department and William Barr doing this political scut work for him, and he's got that little cuckoo. If he loses that, he's exposed, his family's exposed, so he's going to do everything he can, and in the end they'll probably have to literally attach him to a tow truck and drag him out if he loses.
Yeah, well that's the other question. Who is going to be president in February?
I don't. I've been Steve, I've been wrong so much. I mean,
well, go on, be right again.
Listen, let me tell you the truth. I didn't think there was any way in the world in my lifetime that an African American candidate would be elected to the White House. I grew up in the late 50s, 60s. I just didn't think it was possible. So I didn't think Barack Obama had a chance. I met him one time early on when he was running, where he wasn't even registered in the poll. And he was so impressive, and I said to my wife at the time, he's terrific. He's bright. He's perfect. I said, there's no way this country is going to elect that guy. And I was wrong.
Yeah.
And so if I sit here and tell you, whatever I told you, I don't have any faith in myself to know. To be honest, I wasn't among those that thought Hillary was going to win in a landslide. I didn't think that.
Yeah.
However, I certainly didn't think that she was going to lose the states she lost. And so I would have been wrong there. I would have told you the wrong thing then. I don't know.
Right.
We're living in bizarro world.
Well, this is true.
We're living in bizarro world. I mean, I think when I say shit show, this guy has never exhibited a shred of decency or grace or respect for the office he holds or respect for the Constitution. He's never shown any inclination to do the right thing and do the gracious thing. And why would he start on November 3rd? I don't think it will happen.
Now, so, well, how about a slightly more local level? Is Ron DeSantis staying in?
Well, he's not running. He's not up for election this year. It's probably a good thing because the whole COVID thing, his numbers went down.
Right.
He's limited. It's interesting. He's limited his appearances with our president. He got elected on Trump's coattails.
Very much so, yeah.
As a giant, he was just a total suck up to Trump and the border wall and all that. And then he was quiet. And now he went to the White House in May and proclaimed victory over COVID-19. And Florida crashed 2 weeks later. And so his own people, I'm sure, have told him, I'm sure he wants to run for the Senate or even a higher office someday. I think they've already told him that it's not in your interest to be seen at every Florida rally with President Trump and hugging President Trump. No. I mean, he does what he has to do, but he's much smarter than Trump. I'll say that, but his decisions and the way he's manipulated some of the numbers about this pandemic have been unforgivable. Being as smart a guy as he is, and just falling into the same pattern as Trump about trying to make us think it was better than it is. And for like first they wouldn't want to release how many people were dying in prison, how many people were dying in the nursing homes. All of that information had to be pried out of these people.
Yeah.
And if you had a loved one, you had a grandmother in Clearwater or something, you couldn't even see, and you couldn't get even data from the nursing home on how many people are sick, how many people have died, that would be pretty upsetting.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. So how about even going more local? What's going on in Miami right now?
I don't know. I live up in Vero Beach, which is north, about an hour north of Palm Beach. My son, who was a journalist for many years, is an attorney in Miami. So and I'm still write for the Herald, so I get all the news feeds. And right now, it's a big battle between him and the governor, between Dade County and the governor over whether it's safe and to what extent do you open the schools up. The governor's little people have given Dade County and Miami-Dade an ultimatum, and they're saying, wait a minute, every county is different. We've had massive loss of life here. So this is the kind of the dilemma. And like I said, my grandson wants to go back to high school, but everybody's nervous. How safe are they going to be?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Yeah.
What they've discovered, and I don't know if this is true in New Zealand or not, but is that the younger kids get it. The younger kids are better at the distancing and more, listen better. The older they get looser and they get more careless. And by the time you get to college, it's just a free for all.
Yeah,
it's just a germ city.
Well, and I think we've just found the title of your next novel.
Oh my God! I told someone when I was writing Squeeze Me, because they said, well, gosh, you've got this Trump-like figure. What if he resigns before the election, or what if he, has a medical situation, or what if he's indicted or whatever? And I always said, listen, I would trade every drop of sweat that goes into this book if I knew that he was going to be gone and this country was going to be better off. I said I would sacrifice all of that if you could go into the future and look into the future like you said. It's just, there's so many people suffering. There's so many people. There's such horrible divisions, or the racists in this country now have it's now safe to come out in the open. It has been for the last couple of years. So you knew they were there. You didn't know what numbers they were in, and they're out there, and you see all of it in the open, and it's pretty discouraging.
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with a Scottish author named John Niven?
I've heard of him. I haven't read anything.
No. You might like his most recent one. It's called, its title rhymes with The Bucket List. And yeah, we're something of a family show here. But his premise is that Trump gets re-elected, fires Pence, empowers Ivanka as vice president, and then steps down in her favor.
Did you?
So people are coming up with fantasy, nightmare scenarios here.
But did you? There was a story in the Washington Post today. Rick Gates, who is one of his, one of the little Trumpers who got in trouble back in the Russia investigation, is of course writing a book. Everyone who works for Trump writes a book eventually, and he's written a book that says that when Trump first decided to run, he wanted to run with Ivanka as the vice president. That was his original idea, was to run with her as vice president.
Now you see, it's only 9:30 in the morning here, and I need a very stiff drink now. You should have told me that.
No, but what I'm saying is, see what I mean? The difficulty when you're writing, when you're trying to write humor or anything with, especially political humor right now, that you'll pick up the paper the next day and find that it's come true.
There's nothing left, is there? Right. So you say that you're alternating at the moment between the grown-ups and the kids' books. So that must mean, sure, that there's another kids' book on its way.
Yeah, I've started it. Again, I didn't finish. I turned in this book in May, and there was a little bit of editing, and then so I've had a couple months, and then the promotion and all that. So I'm getting slowly cranked up. I'm not in any huge hurry either, because I like most people, I do want to see what's going to happen. Once you sort of try to plot your way forward, and you want a direction that, you want a clear direction, just like everybody wants a clear direction about what's going to happen with this disease, what's going to happen politically. So I'm kind of being tentative about it, because you don't want to write, and all my novels take place, sort of in the here and now. So you don't want to write something that's already dated or has no relevancy by the time it comes out. You definitely, there's so much weirdness, like this tax return story. You can't invent the fact that the president of the United States took a tax write-off of $70,000 for hairstyling while he was on his TV show. 70 grand was one of his.
You've seen that hair though, haven't you? I mean, seriously, you can see where the money went.
Well, I can see it would be like it's like it would be an architecture fee. It's not hairdressing.
There's engineering involved in that, surely.
Yeah, serious engineering. And then you see some of this stuff. Now you couldn't, I have some scenes in Squeeze Me involving a tanning bed.
Yes.
Without giving anything away, there's some a tanning bed that might not be functioning properly that he relies on. But when you start looking at the details of the sorts of things he was writing off, and then you think, well, that's not all that far-fetched.
But I did notice, though, as we've been talking about such matters, I mean, you're clearly losing the will to live, and no one can really blame you for that. But as soon as I mentioned the kids' book, there was a smile flickered across your face. This is clearly a source of joy for you.
That they're such a great audience, Steve. They are really, and here's what's interesting, and it doesn't matter where they are in the country or where they are in the world. I mean, most of the books are set in Florida, but they have such a great sort of inherent love for nature, and there's always an environmental theme to my books, and they have a terrific sense of humor. I mean, and they get the joke, they get it.
Yeah,
and they're so responsive, and the letters they write are really to keep you going. I'm a cynical. I've been in the newspaper, I don't want to tell you how many years, and you're just used to, you do get jaded. There's no way
Yeah,
that you
you
don't
must do.
get jaded and cynical. But then you get these letters from these kids about what this book or that book meant to them, or frighteningly, they teach several of the novels in classes in this country, and I get letters from the teachers and the kids, and you think, and how much this is the first book they've ever read, and they love to read now. I mean,
Right.
you can't put a price on it. It wouldn't. It just gives you this, and maybe it's false hope, but it does give you some hope for the planet, for humanity.
Yeah, it must unjade you just a little bit.
It is, and having, when I started the kids' books, my my stepson and my own nephews and nieces were all about 11 or 12, and I just thought maybe this would be nice to be able to write one book that they could read without me having to worry about the language.
Yeah.
The twisted situations that I come up with, but still have the same sort of smart ass sense of humor, which kids love.
Oh yeah.
And the other thing is that the kids' books, the characters are all kids, but you're making fun of the adults, and that's what I've been doing my whole life in journalism anyway, been making fun of the grown-ups. And so it was a very modest thing that I thought, well, it would just be great to give these kids this book, and this is what I do for a living. And you don't, not maybe strip tease later on when you're older, married perhaps, but the response was such that I couldn't stop. I was only going to do the one. And so I feel very lucky. They're loyal readers. They're funny. And also, they're absolutely frank and blunt.
Oh, God, yeah.
Letters will tell you everything they like, and then they'll get to one character that they didn't like or pissed them off, or then they didn't understand. And they'll just tell you, it's fantastic.
Right. And I was interested to know that you did a bit of cross-pollination with your character, with, as you say, one character.
Yeah.
Is that a character that plays well with kids?
Well, I thought he did. And I mean, he pops up in, without giving too much away in the new and Squeeze Me. And
I wasn't sure if I was allowed to mention that.
One of my
You've opened the door, so
the ex-governor. I think I thought, obviously his language is going to be toned down a little. And he's in that novel I did called Skink. He's around kids the whole time.
Yes.
And so obviously he's not going to be throwing around the same F-bombs that he might in a grown-up book.
Yeah.
But as in sort of an anti-hero, and especially as an environmentalist, that book, it was called Skink. It opens where there's the people stealing turtle eggs on the beach. And here where we live too, the green turtles and the loggerheads come up and they lay these eggs on the same beach they were born on.
Right, yeah.
But there is a whole industry of people that steal them and sell them overseas as aphrodisiacs or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a felony in Florida to do that. So he's, without giving too much away anyway, he's buried under a false turtle nest, breathing through a straw, waiting for the nest robbers to come.
Right, yeah.
And so he can mess them up. But if you're a kid, how can you not dig that scene?
Absolutely,
yeah. So I think that the way his heart and his spirit are true, and even though he's sometimes a little outside the law, I thought, he would be appealing in the same way that, in distant times, Jesse James was the hero to some people because he was, he was only hitting banks. He wasn't hitting, that's there is the amount of folklore there.
Yeah, I do think it's somewhat ironic though for you that clearly your favorite character and the one you keep coming back to and your long-standing hero is in fact a politician.
Well, who briefly a politician who went insane because his background is that he was in a Vietnam War hero.
Right. Yes.
He was talked into running for office, which at the time was quite a badge, and he thought he could actually do something and do something honestly and achieve something, which at least in American politics is really kind of a naive dream. And when he got in the middle of it, he was just up to his nuts in corruption, and he just couldn't take it, and he just went batty, and he ran out of the governor's mansion and disappeared. So he was briefly in politics, but
so we're not defining him as a politician then, fair enough.
No, I wouldn't. I would say it's someone who has been damaged deeply by politics.
Yes, well, I think that's all of us, really, to be fair, isn't it?
Oh
These days?
my God, it is, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I just read the new book by Nick Hornby, and it's interesting because there's a lot of Brexit. And
Yes. Yeah.
it's not a political book, but among the characters and discussions about
Yes.
and on both sides of Brexit and what it did to families and lovers who were on the same page. I mean, it was interesting because I thought, well, he must have been, and I don't know, I'm supposed to interview him in a week or so, but he must have been affected the same way I was when you're trying to write a contemporary novel and this swirl of madness is around you. That how can it not, infect in some way what you're writing?
I'd imagine. I mean, Brexit would almost be a character in itself, wouldn't it?
These guys, Boris pops up in there. There's
Yeah, of my various citizenships and nationalities, I'm telling you, New Zealand's one I'm most proud of at the moment.
I would be someday when I can handle that length of an airline flight, and you guys have opened your doors again. I mean, it's one of those places on my bucket list, just because everyone that I've ever known who's gone there has fallen in love with it. Everyone.
It's only 13 hours away. It's not that far.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll make a dosage of Xanax that'll get me that far. I'm not a great traveler, but
fair enough.
But I do, I spend a lot of time in Montana, and friends of mine say that it's the majesty of Montana is, I mean, New Zealand is even, more impressive, but they say that's what it reminds them of. And I fell in love with Montana the first time I went there. What I loved about it was the fact that it was the landscape and the whole geography. It was too majestic. You couldn't bulldoze it. There was rivers, there was mountains. Florida is flat. They can bulldoze everything.
I think they already have.
Yeah, and they're trying.
Yeah. I mean, when I moved here from Clearwater, I was struck by the fact that you can have beaches half a mile long without a single building next to them. And then I think of Clearwater Beach. I think, you can barely even see the sand. And
one of the reasons I'm in Vero Beach right now is because there's a very strict height ordinance.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I can walk a couple blocks to the beach, and I can't see a high rise anywhere. And there's a dune line.
Yeah.
And it's literally during this season, just ended, hundreds and hundreds of turtle nests. So that you got these sea turtles hatching, and they were just smart. They said, we're not. Then you go one county down. I mean, literally drive 10 miles down A1A, and it's like clear, stacked up, and it's just tragic. It just to see. Are you kidding me? Why? Well, money.
Well, yes, that does seem to be the way, doesn't it? So, the other thing I was going to ask you before I let you go, you've been very generous with your time this morning, is you mentioned Nick Hornby. Who else are you reading at the moment?
Well, I'll confess, when I'm working on fiction, as I have been, I don't read much other fiction.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't do it on purpose. I just don't want to be. If I read something great, it'll make me feel like I'm worthless and I'm a fraud. If I wrote something terrible, then I think, I'm the next James Joyce. There's nothing good that can come out of reading fiction. While I read Nick, and I'm finishing a short story collection by Karen Russell that I've been trying to trying to find the time to. And then I just finished reading a book called Lords of the Fly. Right. Yeah. About this is my own dementia, but it's all about the fly fishing for huge tarpon, which is an incredible game this year. And because I know all the characters that were for fishing for the world record that were just obsessed with it. And a friend of mine, Monty Burke, has written a terrific book about that race, and it's about that contest and about the mentality. And I've done a lot of tarpon fishing, but never on that scale. So I read that book. I enjoyed it greatly. So and I don't know what I'm going to tackle next. I've got a stack of stuff that I have to get to that I just put aside when I was working on Squeeze Me, and then the other thing is I get sent a lot of books in manuscript form that they want the little blurbs for.
Of course.
And some of them are friends of mine, and some of them are, but I don't do a lot of that.
Right.
You know, it's not, I'm not being mean about it. Just I don't have time to.
No, that could be a full-time job, surely.
Well, every book that's set in Florida, whatever kind of fiction it is, it finds its way to me saying,
well, as we said, you are Florida man.
You like, that's all. And I want to say to them, you know, really, the one thing I don't want to do anymore, I get enough of Florida. I mean, a newspaper job, my own work, I would much rather read a novel set somewhere else, or set in a different, completely different kind of novel too. You know, I mean, there's that I can absorb it and enjoy it and not worry about it affecting subconsciously my own writing.
No, that does make sense.
That makes sense to you.
It certainly does. Well, listen, thank you so much for giving us your time this morning. We've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you for talking to me and timing it this way. So
nice, worked out really nicely.
I would be awake and semi cogent.
Yeah, no, it's worked out nicely. It's 9 o'clock in the morning here, so it's been perfect. So just to recap, Squeeze Me. It's on sale now, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
All right.
Carl
Thank
Hiaasen,
you
thank you very much.
All right.
Goodbye,
be
mate.
safe. Stay safe.
You too. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.